Who wants to go touch grass? If you said not me, well, you're shit out of luck. Cause we are going hiking this coming Tuesday as we are finally getting the Camp Veritas goals through the Cyber New Year March event, arriving in the latest Blue Archive update, with Camp Hare and Camp Kotama being the featured 3-star units. Sadly for us though, we'll probably have to wait a while for our cuties Camp Maki and Camp Chihiro to be playable. Why couldn't you have at least made her a welfare unit, Yostar? Look at her, she's adorable! Anyways, here is a short review of our Camp Veritas goals. Let's start off with our underrated, adorable, white-haired genius hacker who is totally not addicted to energy drinks and has crawled out of her neat hole to touch grass. It's Camp Hare. She looks like a snug cutie patootie in those winter clothes, and it's such a shame that she doesn't get more attention, cause personally, I find her to be one of the cutest characters in the game. She is an unlimited explosive support striker with light armor who is terrible in urban terrains, excellent in field, and average indoors. Her equipment is as such, with the hat improving her DPS capabilities and the pin and amulet increasing her survivability. Let's take a gander at Camp Hare's skills. She has a 2-cost EX where she increases one ally's attack, excluding herself, for 26 seconds, while granting herself 5 sweet potato stacks, and she can hold up to a max of 15 stacks. Her basic skill, which activates every 50 seconds, increases the attack of all allies in a round-shaped area for 30 seconds. Her enhanced skill boosts her attack, and with her sub-skill, if she has any sweet potato stacks available, she consumes 1 stack to deal additional damage to enemies. At UE40, she gains additional buff retention on her enhanced skill plus, and at UE50, her field combat power upgrades from S to SS. Camp Hare has gotten a glow up from her regular version, as she has improved significantly. Funny what touching grass can do to you, huh? Now, Camp Hare has turned into a very strong attack hyper buffer and hyper carry enabler, and this is due to her EX and basic skills. Firstly, her EX is extremely potent, being able to increase one ally's attack by a whopping 80.4% at max level, greatly elevating their damage output. Furthermore, it is extremely cheap at only 2 costs, and the buff lasts for pretty long, with a duration of 26 seconds. All these make Camp Hare one of the game's meta buffers, as she drastically increases your hyper carry's DPS, allowing them to hit like a truck. Next, her basic skill, which is also pretty good. Even though it does take some time to activate, it is compensated by its lengthy attack buff duration of 30 seconds, AoE range, meaning most, if not all your students will receive the buff, and its decent values of 24.3% at max level. In fact, by combining both her EX and basic skill, her attack buffs become almost as powerful as Himari's. And before you ask, yes, her attack buffs can stack on each other since it comes from 2 different sources. Other than that, she can also have slightly decent damage output as a result of her enhanced skill, and her sub-skill granting her additional damage if she has sweet potato stacks, which she can easily gain just by proccing her EX. Finally, at UE40, she gains extra buff duration, meaning it extends the time of the buffs from her EX and basic skills by 19% at max level enhanced skill plus, so about an extra 4 seconds or so. However, like Himari, this isn't needed unless you're an expert player who knows how to utilize and min-max these few additional seconds, and you're trying to be competitive in endgame content like raids. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? How does she compare to another certain white-haired genius hacker, Himari? Well, for one, with the 2 at max level, Himari's attack buff is stronger than Camp Hare's, as the former doubles the attack of a single unit, while the latter increases an ally's attack by 80.4%. And she needs her EX and basic skills for her attack buff to be nearly the same amount as one Himari EX. However, Camp Hare's is cheaper and her buff's duration is twice as long as Himari's, allowing for better and more freedom in your rotations, and it makes her relatively simpler to use and manage. For example, it's easier for your DPS unit to use their EX twice during the duration of a single use of her buff, or you might have time to hyper buff another DPS student, thus having two units who have been buffed by Camp Hare. These make Camp Hare somewhat beginner friendly compared to Himari, since you won't have to stress too much about limited time or pulling off very specific skill rotations. Secondly, while Himari is a special student, Camp Hare is a striker, and this can be both a good and a bad thing. As she is a striker, it means you can fill your empty special slot with other students, like a healer or another buffer, or even a damage dealer, allowing you to try out different students and mixing up your team, when previously, you had to have Himari in there due to how important she is. Plus, Camp Hare is able to contribute to your team's damage output just by attacking, something a special student like Himari can't do outside of their skills. But the downside is, being a striker, there's a chance she might die, and if she does, you lose the ability to buff your student and you have to press that dreaded restart button, making Camp Hare not ideal in certain content. This is a problem that Himari won't have cause special students can't die, and you will always have her attack buff available, meaning Himari is much more flexible and you can slot her into any team and content. Speaking of flexible, I forgot to mention, Himari also has permanent increased cost recovery on her sub skill, which is extremely useful, letting you regain your cost quicker and activating your EX faster. And this is another reason why Himari is slightly more versatile than Camp Hare. Nevertheless, even with everything that I just said, none of these mean that Himari is better than Camp Hare, or vice versa. In fact, they are on equal terms. While their role as an attack hyper buffer is the same, their overall kit is distinct from one another, as they have their own users, advantages, and disadvantages. And you can still have both Camp Hare and Himari in your roster. If you use Camp Hare, it frees up a space in your special slot, or using Himari lets you bring in another striker. It all depends on the team you're bringing in, and having the two allows for more freedom in your team selection. Camp Hare can be used in almost any PvE content, with the keyword being almost, as she is pretty fucking flexible, but she is mostly used in high-end content like raids, where she truly shines. In this content, her role is to act as a hyper buffer for your main DPS unit, massively increasing their attack with her EX and basic skills, turning them into a killing machine. While you're typically able to use her in any of your teams, it is advisable to not pair her with Himari, as their EX's attack buffs do not stack, so they are often employed in separate teams, especially on Insane and Torment difficulties. Not to mention, if you were to pick one to use, if you only need a single team, you'd probably bring in Himari instead to pair with Akko due to them being the meta pairing. Plus, her additional cost recovery and higher attack buff will help clear the battle faster. In terms of raids, she sees a lot of use in almost every single one. Bina, Shirokuro, Kaiten, Perodzilla, HOD, Wakamo Hovercraft, regardless of their armor type. Even though she doesn't deal a lot of damage against blue armor, her main job is to buff your students, so her DPS does not matter. Unfortunately, she isn't great against raid bosses with explosive attack type on Insane and Torment, with these bosses being Gauss, Cheesed, and Hieronymus. This is because their raid attacks will deal 2 times damage to her light armor, potentially taking her down pretty quickly, and you lose the ability to buff your students. Well, theoretically you can bring her into these raids, but I would personally advise against it, cause then you'll have to babysit her and ensure she doesn't die. On the other hand, while she may not be good against those enemies, she is great against bosses with piercing attack on Insane and Torment, like Bina, Shirokuro, Kaiten, and Wakamo Hovercraft, since her raid armor can resist their yellow attacks. There are 2 more raids that I'd like to talk about, which are Gregorius and Kurokage. For Gregory, while you can use her in this raid, in my humble opinion, there are other units who should be prioritized in your striker slot. For example, another single target DPS, or an AoE damage dealer, or maybe an additional AoE healer, or perhaps even an extra debuffer. I just personally think that there are other units whom you should prioritize bringing into this raid over Camp Hare. Plus, from what I've seen, not many players really use her in their Insane/Torment Greg teams. But I could be wrong, and that is not to say you can't use Camp Hare, as she is still a solid pick. For that cat-dog hybrid whatever, I'm still unsure about her use in here, cause there's only been one Kurokage raid so far, and it came out before Camp Hare was even released. But you should still be able to use her against him with her role being the same as usual, though you might have to put in extra effort to make sure she doesn't get killed, since Kuro does hit hard. Or it could be a similar situation to Greg, where there are other students who are of a higher significance. Ultimately, the most important thing for you to know is that you can employ her in most raids and most PvE content in general, where you will use her to hyper buff your DPS units attacked by a fuckton, substantially improving their damage output. Overall, Camp Hare is an extremely strong attack hyper buffer, on the level of Himari, except she's a striker and you can consider her as a meta student. Thus, I personally feel that Camp Hare is a must pull unit if you don't have Himari and if you're a new player. Even if you do own Himari, I still believe that you should pull for Camp Hare, especially if you have a lot of paroxysms, as having both of them will greatly help you in a lot of endgame content since you can use them as attack buffers in different teams. However, if you already have Himari and you're content with just relying on our wheelchair lady to carry you, maybe because you don't plan on doing the high difficulty raids like Torment, or you don't have enough paroxysms, and you want to continue saving for the upcoming limited 3rd anniversary units who are releasing next month, then it is totally understandable if you skipped her and wait for a spook, since Camp Hare is an unlimited unit. But you may still pull for her if you're like me and you have a fetish for white hat waifus, or you love our energy drink addicted wife who doesn't like touching grass. Now we move on to one of Veritas' talented hackers, who is also one of Sensei's biggest stalkers in all of Kivotos, since she loves wiretapping and eavesdropping. Two has been dragged out of the club room to touch grass. It's Camp Kotama. She is an unlimited piercing support striker who has yellow armor and whose terrain moods are almost similar to Camp Hare's. S combat power in field terrains, but B combat power in urban and D combat power in indoors. These are her equipment, with the badge improving her survivability by providing her with more HP, and the necklace being the most important, since it boosts her CZ power. Time for her skills. Her 6 cost EX skill deals damage to an enemy while inflicting confusion, and her basic skill increases hers and one other ally's attack for 35 seconds every 45 seconds. Her enhanced skill further amplifies her attack, and with her sub skill, she deals extra damage when attacking enemies. Her enhanced skill plus at UE40 grants her additional CC power, and her field combat power converts from S to SS at UE50. As you can tell from her kit, Camp Kotama is primarily a CC focused student, and she's bloody good at what she does. Currently, among all the available CC units in the game, Camp Kotama has the longest CC values, with a whopping 11.5 seconds at max level, which is very lengthy, and it's way more compared to units like Misaki, Chihiro, and sadly my wife Kayoko. Heck, even at EX skill level 1, her CC values are already higher than most of the other CC students at 7.2 seconds, making her an excellent CC unit. However, while hers can technically be shorter than Swimsuchi's, since the latter does 5.3 seconds 3 times as she shoots 3 grenades, it requires the target to already have a CC effect. So I'm not counting that, and I'm looking at her base value of 2.7 seconds per grenade at max level, which isn't longer than Camp Kotama's. I hope that makes sense. Plus, the CC she applies is Confusion, being one of only 2 students in the game who has this effect in their kit, making it pretty rare. and it's nice to have since it's always fun seeing the enemy turn against each other. Not only that, her EX also actually deals pretty good damage, with a multiplier of 906% at max level. However, while some might complain that her EX is quite expensive at 6 cost, it already has very high CC values and really good damage. So in my humble opinion, the huge cost balances out her strong EX, and I kinda understand why the devs did it. Plus, other CC units such as Kayoko and Suimso Chise also have a 6 cost EX, so we can't really complain and just use cost cutting EX skills to get over this problem. Other than those, her basic skill is kinda meh, while the increase of one other ally's attack and the pretty short downtime of 10 seconds is decent. Unfortunately, it only procs every 45 seconds, which in my opinion is too long for a very small attack buff even at level 10 basic skill. Finally, her sub-skill is quite good, as she can deal extra damage to any enemy, not needing extra further requirements like medium-sized enemies or whatever, and this can improve her damage output. In terms of usage, Camp Kotama is extremely useful for CC related content like HOD and Wakamo Hovercraft. For HOD, she has become an essential unit for this raid, being used in a lot of teams for any difficulty. On Insane and lower, she has taken over Swimsuit Chise's and Kayoko's role as the main CC applier, though you can still use the two of them if you don't have Camp Kotama since they are very good, as her EX is able to immediately fill the pillars and HOD's CC gauges. But the confusion effect itself does nothing to them. During the HOD raid in JP last month, as you can see from this footage, she was used in many players' Insane teams, cause she makes your runs much faster. For Torment, she is once again a vital unit for one of your teams, where her role remains the same. Apply CC to HOD and the pillars using her EX, and even on this difficulty, she can straight up just fill their CC gauges. But unlike Insane and lower, while Kotama is a very important unit for one of your teams, you will still need Swimsuit Chise or Kayoko in your other teams, as you require more than one team for Torment since HOD got hands, or tentacles. Regardless of difficulty though, you would have to pair her with units who have cost reduction EX skills. And while New Year Fuka is a great choice, you'd ideally want to use Ui with her since our stinky librarian can cut Kotama's expensive cost by half for the latter's next 2 applications, allowing you to use her EX for only 3 costs twice. Aside from those, Kotama can also deal pretty decent damage in the yellow version of this raid, as not only does her piercing attack deal extra damage to HOD's yellow armor, but her EX skill can also inflict fairly good damage, and her sub-skill further improves her damage output. Lastly, Kotama also takes less damage from HOD on Insane and Torment, since her heavy armor can resist his mystic attacks. As for Wakamo Hovercraft, while she can be used in phase 1 of this raid to fill Wakamo's CC gauge to stun her, I personally have not seen anyone bring her in this raid, even on Insane and Torment, and I assume it's because for one, she has heavy armor, so obviously she will take more damage, and knowing how hard Wakamo hits in this phase, well, she can go down pretty fucking quick if you aren't careful. And 2, there are other CC units who have auto CC in their kit. For instance, Kayoko and Swimsuit Chise can automatically apply CC using their basic skills. And even though they can cause inconsistencies or issues managing Wakamo's CC gauge, like Swimsuit Chise's taking 50 seconds to proc, and Kayoko's only being a 30% chance to inflict fear, at least they can passively fill up the CC gauge outside of using their EX for no cost. Moreover, there's also Fubuki, who can passively apply CC using her basic skill, which procs very quickly due to its low requirement, or Hifumi, whose Peroro-sama Onegaishimasu can inflict CC while tanking Wakamo's attacks. In essence, while you can bring Camp Kotama into this raid, as her CC should be able to fill Wakamo's CC gauge, there are just other CC units ahead of her for this raid who are more versatile and proven to be more suitable for phase 1's mechanics. Overall, Camp Kotama is the best CC unit in the game thus far, as her CC duration is the highest, Thus, if and only if you're looking to have a much easier time in HOD, Camp Kotama is a must pull, since it is her best raid and she was practically made for it. However, sadly, she is only really used in that one piece of content so far, and not anywhere else, cause there ain't a lot of CC related content, much less ones that require confusion. Plus, her banner is featured alongside Camp Hare's, who is way more important and flexible, not to mention the amount of important units releasing in the next few weeks. Which is why I would personally advise you skip her, as she is currently unimportant. Instead, save your paroxysms for the upcoming characters, use other CC students to replace her in Horde, and pull on Camp Hare's banner if you want to. But again, if you wanna have a better score in HOD, or if she is your waifu, then go ahead and pull for her. Keep in mind though that while UE40 increases her CC power, in my opinion, you don't exactly need it, with 3 stars Camp Kotama being sufficient, unless you're a whale or you plan on doing Torment HOD. And that's all for this week's review. All in all, Camp Hare is an excellent attack hyper buffer on par with Himari, but other than their core function of increasing one unit's attack by a fuck ton, they both have their own uses, advantages and disadvantages, and you can have both in your roster, just not in the same team, which is why in my opinion, I would strongly advise pulling for Camp Hare, unless of course you're fine with just having Himari, or you don't have a lot of scenes and you're saving for the 3rd anniversary units. In the case of Camp Kotama, while she may be a great CC unit, especially for HOD, she doesn't have a lot of use so far. Thus, I personally feel that you should skip her and save your Pyrox. But anyways, let me know who you're pulling for if you are. Good luck with your pulls in whatever game you're playing, and I'll see y'all in the next one.